Dani Bridge.
Oi,
I'm
oi.
so excited that you're here.
Thanks, lovely.
One of my favourite human beings in the world. You know that.
Oh, thank you, my darling.
And I've had you. We've been on camera a few times in different capacities.
We have, yeah. Last time I was helping with the
Live-a-thon.
live-a-thon. Yeah, that was brilliant. Seriously, thank you so much. It was
That's
such a
gonna
great.
come back round again,
I know. It was brilliant.
So I'll think about that. Anyway, for another day. Today you're with me to come on our Curious Entrepreneurs channel to talk to our audience, which are predominantly under 24. So some of us are entering into the world. They haven't quite had the roller coaster that we've been on already. So talking about entrepreneurship and education, I want to talk to you about community interest companies as well. But first, would you mind just introducing yourself? How do you introduce yourself?
Oh, well, it's rather, elaborate. And so I'm Danielle. I'm the Chief Exec of ABC Life Support. So ABC Life Support delivers physical and mental health first aid training across the UK. We're now moving into education for adults around getting them back into work, which is coming later on this year. Very exciting, or the front end of next year, which is awesome. And we're also running an empowerment program, which is where we deliver train-the-trainer programs to agencies across the UK for them to deliver into their own communities. So pretty awesome stuff. So I speak on mental health. I do lots of talks around that subject, and just educating people as to what it is that's important, I guess.
Amazing, which you do for me every day, actually. Sometimes
exactly.
Alex, you all right? You all right?
Listen to this tune. Yeah, it's banging. Yeah.
Bless you. Well, look, we'll get into some of that. So we always start the same question. So what currently sparks your curiosity when you think about 2023? What are you curious about?
This is you don't ever go small, dear Alex. Like, seriously, brilliant question. I think what sparks my curiosity for 2023 is revolution. I feel something in the air. Do you know what I mean? It's charged at the moment. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of lack of acceptance. We're not going to be accepting what we've been given, and we're going to stand up for what's right, especially in the education system, actually, which is something that I'm really happy to see. I think now people are standing up and saying, no, not right, not for me. I want something different. I want something better. And I'm really up for that.
Okay, awesome. So you've gone in on a revolution. I love this word. So, okay, you're up for it. What does that look like? What do you see that as a positive? And do you have any view on that? Do you have it personally or professionally?
I've got 2 kids. I've got a 13 and a 14-year-old.
And I've been in the cafe when you've got a phone call.
Yeah, well, exactly, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's going on with the education system at the moment where they're failing our children. And I've got 2 kids. And do you know what? I honestly thought at the beginning of this journey of motherhood for 2 teenagers that I would be quite a laid-back mum. I thought I'd be one of those that's, well, guys, you just got to get on with it. That's school, blah, blah. And I'm not. And my kids aren't. And they know that I'm not as well, which I don't think is sometimes very good, because they know that how I feel about it. Yeah. And not necessarily leverage it, but they know that I'm not invested in what the schools are currently doing. I don't agree with what the schools are currently doing all the time. So they come home with all of these stories going, Mum, they said blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, it's just terrible, which isn't good.
Invested in them.
Well, I am, but I'm also giving them kind of carte blanche to go back to the school and to challenge. And although there is a part of me that's very happy about that, there is also the conformist in me that's like, well, guys, it's school, to kind of conform, because that's what it's all about. So I'm a bit conflicted, but I'm also very open in that feeling. Yeah. I share that with my kids, that I'm conflicted, because I want them to go to school every day, and I want them to be good students, and I want them to, listen and take it all on. But I also, on the other hand, want them to challenge the status quo, and I want them to kind of stand up for themselves and stand up for what it is that they think is important, which is a bit of a,
it's the chaos and the optimism. Both playing off each other. It's like, well, where is the opportunity and all of that? And we asked, so when we met Stephen Bartlett recently, and we asked him what he was curious about. And he was very curious about the opportunities in all of this chaos and all of this messiness.
Yeah.
So where be a revolution or whatever that looks like, I think we're all actually in agreement that that's happening. But unfortunately, I don't know if we're in a position where we actually can influence it or not, because Who are we trying to influence?
You know what?
Who's responsible?
Seriously, it's such an interesting question, because my husband and I have been talking about this quite recently. And actually, I'm reading a book at the moment called Outrage by Dottie. Don't know if you've ever heard it.
Seen this.
Really interesting book, which basically talks about how in the social media age, we're all quite outraged by things we see all the time, right? Anything and everything, yeah. And we'll kind of stand against our outrage and rah. And if it's the education system, it might be that, I'll put a post out about it, or I will answer someone and go, yes, rah, here. But nothing ever gets done. And then my husband and I were talking about the poll tax riots, or the riots with the injustice of the community, the police force on the black community years and years ago, where they got out and did something. Yeah. They did something, they stood up, there was violence. I'm not advocating violence under any circumstances, but there was this need for, I'm going to push and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be counted and I'm going to, I'm going to stamp my feet and I'm going to walk these streets and I'm going to say what I think. Whereas now I think we tend to hide behind our phones and, we have our protesting there. And, not necessarily everything. There was a lot of protesting, in 2020, as we know, Sarah Everard and the killing of George Floyd, etc. And people did go out there and peacefully protest. But nothing gets done. So we stand up and we talk about it, but nothing gets done. And I've been quite vocal about my apathy towards all of this stuff. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's really hard to build up a sense of wanting to do stuff when I'm just so browbeaten by it all. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like you said, how do we do it? How do we make a difference? How do we make, my kids go to school and get a decent education about things that matter in the world? How do I do that without writing an email? Because you feel, I feel powerless sometimes. The outrage of it, right? So the reason I guess I'm curious about next year, or what I want to see in the world in terms of change, is how we can mobilise that. I said earlier on, there is this feeling, there's this charge, but how can we mobilise it to actually make a difference in terms of change?
So move from a vocal minority to a mobile minority. Yeah,
absolutely. How can my kids be heard at school on things that are actually really important and deserve answers? Without being thrown into a C2 because of insolence? How can those teachers become curious about what their students are saying? How can the students be armed with information to be able to talk about these things diplomatically without causing problems at school or rioting at school, right? But getting their no.
Oh my God.
I'm just sorry, guys.
We're so sorry. We're so sorry about the riot.
We're not advocating riots at school. But yeah, exactly. But there is this opportunity for them to be able to say, actually, guys, the education system hasn't changed in X amount of years. We are of an era where we don't recognise this anymore. You're asking us to do stuff. I'm not aligned with it. I don't feel it. It doesn't connect. How can we push forward with our own agenda?
There was a really interesting video, I don't know if you've seen it, being shared around social media over the last week or so, with the quadratic formula. There's a young girl stood up in the parliament and said, I can recite the quadratic formula. And she did it, she recited it and said, well, actually, that was pinned up on my wall for 3 months. And, when my GCSEs came around, luckily it came up and I got it right. But it didn't prepare me for, the rest of my life. So what does my mental health mean? And how do I maintain my well-being? What does tax mean? How do I go get a job? All of that sort of stuff. And she put this call to action into the parliament. Everyone stood there, clapped, and everyone's sharing it on LinkedIn. I get tagged in all these things, you can imagine. Yep. And my comment on every single one of them was, yes, and everyone will share it, and everyone will applaud, yet budgets are cut, and the action's not there. It was the same as Sir Ken Robinson. Passing of Sir Ken Robinson, bless you and your family. I thought, his TED talk from 15 years ago about how school kills creativity. He's actually just got a new book out. His daughter's published it called Imagine If, which I'm looking forward to read. 20 million views on YouTube. Everyone clapped. Everyone goes, yeah. No action. Where's the action at?
Because we do not have the power. Therein lies the issue, right? When you have people in government who are the policy writers and the people that write this stuff and tell us what it is that we're supposed to do, who have no connection whatsoever to the experiences, even though it's staring them blatantly in the face. There is no accountability for those that govern.
Yeah.
Where is the, the independent adjudicators of said government, right? There isn't. It doesn't exist. So from that point of view, nothing gets done. And I genuinely, you and I have had this conversation offline before about the education system. And I swear to goodness, it's almost as if someone has gone, Mr. Minister, Mrs. Minister, or Minister, we have to do something about the education system. It's really not fit for purpose. Okay, bring it over here. They open this big old book and go, a bit too big, can't be dealing with that right now. Yeah, shut it and pass it on. Literally, because there is no other way of explaining how we are getting it so wrong. So at the moment, I'm delivering a training program into a school in Hertfordshire called our Young Persons Empowerment Program. And it's all around my citizenship and my mental health. Literally those 2 modules. That's it. It's a 10-week program.
First one's intriguing me.
It's pretty interesting.
My citizenship.
And what has been really instrumental for me in terms of carrying on this program is how impactful it has been to teach young people at school about life skills, about them being a part of the community, being part of society, and about their place in it, hence my citizenship. And get this, because this is the bit that's quite interesting to me. It's not for the school. It's for the other provision. Yeah. The alternative provision. Yeah,
my favourites.
So, it's because they can't go to school, right? They don't fit in to the school. They don't sit still for long enough, or they don't, brilliant. So these guys are coming into a class every Monday, doing a session with me and some other associates such as David Duker and Jolene Ironside, where we are doing things on confidence and resilience, where David's bringing some information from the past. We are doing some things around mindfulness and self-care. We are doing things around my citizenship, what makes a good person, what makes a good first aider, for example, those kinds of things. And the change in these young people is just phenomenal. On week 1, I was asking them how you are. That's one thing we do throughout all of our weeks. How are you? And I spend a good 5 minutes on that. On week 1, I didn't get a feedback, nothing. Today, the teacher said, actually, Danielle, these guys, I just want to say thank you so much, because on week 1, they wouldn't have said a word, but now everyone's being really honest about how they are. Yeah. And we're talking about how you are, honestly, and moving forward with solutions.
Well done.
So these young people are in a school, they're learning something which I wish every kid had an opportunity to listen to. And the only reason they are on this program is because the school didn't know what to do with them. And that's the bit that frustrates me. And then on the other course I did a couple of weeks ago, where I talked about young people, was on a money and mental health workshop, right? So this is for adults who work in citizens advice, who work in Department of Work and Pensions, who work in other agencies where they're dealing with people who have serious mental health challenges and mental health difficulties, because the link there is quite clear. Yeah. And we're talking about this. We're talking about, what is it that we need to do? And I'm going, we need to go back. We need to go back to the young people.
Start that 8 years old.
That young person who managed to regurgitate that thing. What was it that she did?
The quadratic formula.
What the actual, will the quadratic equation help me with my debt management? Or will it help me go on budget when I have to go to Iceland and Waitrose to go and get my shopping?
No,
will it help me to understand my place in the world? No, it won't. Now, for somebody who works in that, no disrespect, right? That's your business. You crack on with that. And I understand that is very specific to a skill set that you need for a specific job. Yeah. But in terms of the things that we need to learn, how about knowing not to Klarna something? Have you ever heard of Klarna?
Yeah, of course.
Don't Klarna. Don't do it. What's Klarna, I hear you say? It's a payment scheme that you can get on a jumper that costs $7.99. So you can now split that $7.99
just creates bad habits.
But for some people who haven't got enough money, that might be the only way that they've got it, right? I get it. But what they don't know is if you Klarna £100 worth of things, it's going to turn into £600 worth of debt.
Right, yeah.
There's no education on that. So we're talking about how, as adults, that we can overcome these things. When I'm saying by the time we get to adulthood, it's too late. We're then just doing cleanup. We're then doing firefighting. Yeah. We need to go back to the basics. We need to change it. We need a revolution. Absolutely. So
to unpack there, I think. So I think this is the power. So there's a couple of things you said. There was something about lived experience first that I think is really key to understand. There's a wonderful organisation that I've met, and I hope to get on a podcast soon, called Expert Citizens. They're surprise, they're a CIC, and they're all about lived experience through homelessness. And what they're now doing, which is amazing, up in Stoke-on-Trent, they're pulling together lived experience citizen crews to advise policymakers on how to create policies.
Brilliant.
Right? So,
yes, fantastic.
So here's the entrepreneur in me. Are we going to wait for them to do it? Bear in mind, I just said 15 years ago, Sir Ken Robinson told us all and we all clapped, and quadratic formula video goes viral, and you're in there, you can see it. You mentioned David's in there, he can see it. Obviously, we're engaging with, I don't know, nearly 30 schools now, we can see it. Other partners in our crews, not even just in schools, working with sport, we're working with social housing projects, and I know you're doing the same. We can see it all. We're all out there, we're all out having battles, and then every now and again, like now, we're coming out from our battle, we're coming back to regroup, to go, oh, you're all right, can we just have a hug, can we have a cup of tea?
Yeah.
Oh, and we get very agitated by it, and there's outrage and whatever else. But are there, is community interest companies the opportunity here, where whilst our government I actually think they are leaning closer towards trusting us, because the CIC element, because of that structure and label enables us to say, hey, we are here, we make this guarantee, and we're a safe bet. We also look after ourselves because we can make revenue. Are there opportunities, do you think, in the market for others to come into the CIC landscape to start to address some of these issues alongside the education system? Not to say they shouldn't change, because I agree, we should be, let's go. I'm with you. Let's start. Let's go down to number 10 and sort them out. But actually, in our local area, a few community interest companies working together, like you've just described there, is that not a solution that we could embrace?
Yeah, absolutely. It is a solution. It's a solution that exists for as long as the revenue exists.
Yes.
And therein lies the problem.
So let's talk about that.
Because a CIC model is effectively you trade and you use your money, your profits, to be able to go and offset that in the community in whichever way you see fit. Yeah. So for us, it's subsidised training. We're not dependent upon grants and other money, because of the fact that when you are trading, people aren't really necessarily giving as perhaps to CRCs as they would be to charities. Yes. And I get that. I understand that, because there is a way to make money. But there is also an opportunity for us to be able to work with the demographics from what the CIC is built from. Now, every founder, chief exec of a CIC, built the business because of a need, because of a lived experience. All of us. That's why we do the work that we do, which is why our founder stories are so strong. Because we do work for the benefit of society, and it's the very essence and very core of what we do. And so therefore we have a drive. We are driven to see change in the world, or whichever group of people that we are working with, because it is our very core and our very essence. And that's wonderful. But as an organisation, you then have all of the other things that you've got to do from a business point of view, which then support the CIC model, the impact, right? So the impact is what we all want to see. The running of the company is sometimes hard and sometimes a challenge, and financially not as lucrative perhaps as we would be if we were running these big old stakeholder organisations where they get loads of money in their pocket. Absolutely. So it does become, I don't know about you, but there is a certain level of resentment for me specifically around doing business for good and wanting to see change in the world, but financially it not being as lucrative. So there is a concern I have that we are doing the work of social services. We are.
I know that.
We are doing the work of social services, and yet there is a social service budget, which they keep cutting all the time, right? So we as business owners are holding up a social service which we are all paying for in our taxes, which we are all paying for and contributing to. Yeah. So there is a level of resentment there for me.
You're not alone, by the way.
And absolutely. But I am also very happy to be able to work within the groups I'm working with to deliver the qualitative impact that I deliver on a daily basis. So I do believe that there is an opportunity for us, but there is a thing in the back of my head that says, well, why the bloody hell should we have to?
There was another local CIC speaking to the other day that they've been feeding families that can't afford to, not food bank, but they're a CIC, a separate one. I won't name names. But the council is actively referring people to them.
Yeah, no money.
They can't, not worse than no money. they're actually trying to shut them down because they're not a charity. So they're saying, well, we're going to keep passing people to you. We tell you we need you to scale, we need you to grow because we need to keep passing people to you, but we can't give any money, we can't give any support because you're set up as a CIC and not a charity. So I think there's probably some opportunities there. I think the most important thing for me with that macro head, that curious head on, is if we can prove it, because we talk about founder-led experience. So we started it because we got lived experience. The reason I started the CIC is because as a 14-year-old father leaving school with no options, this is what I wish I had. We know your story, and I will link back to actually a podcast episode I did with Dani, a previous podcast, because your story is very relevant to that point. But if we can showcase it, if we can document it, if we can show we're more effective, then I do think that then there'll be no choice. They have to. Because the future is CIC. The future has to be CIC.
Yeah, well, I'm in agreement with the CIC model. It's something that we've been running since 2012, right? Yeah. So from that point of view, we were one of the first. I remember it was really tough. People didn't understand it. Yeah, when we first, they were like, why are you doing that? You mean you're not like getting loads of profit? Like, no, I want to do work business for good. And there are people out there who can't access this stuff, right? And I want to try and help them. It was an interesting conversation with my accountant. Really? What? But he kind of got, jumped on board, and people, it's now more accepted, I think, even these short years later. I agree with you, Alex. I think that there is an opportunity for us all. I've got to just drop the anger, I think, because that's the thing that for me is that, because you see the cost of living at the moment. It's a really tough time. Cost of living, everything is tough.
It's tough in a good economy.
Let alone in
economy.
Let alone in a failing economy.
Horrendous.
And actually, as we kind of dig deeper into this time, it's becoming more scary and more urgent. This sense of urgency is becoming more, and I think that's where my mental health awareness kicks in, because I'm now going, right, okay, there is this sense of urgency, there is anger attached to it, there is panic, there is all these things that are happening because of what's going on in the world. That's where I go macro to micro, because then I go, okay, what can I do now? What can I do to help support myself and those people in my community or my circle to try and, drill back to the actual basics, to ride this wave out until 2023 when it all kicks off.
When the opportunity comes.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect segue into talking about entrepreneurship, because if there's ever opportunity for anyone in any market, when the recession comes, history tells us over decades that entrepreneurial endeavours and entrepreneurs or people with an entrepreneurial mindset will look at recession and go, sweet, let me come play. Because that's where the disruption comes in. When people are desperate, that's where I think the opportunities are. So have you yet identified yourself as an entrepreneur yet?
No.
And I knew you were going to say that. I'm glad you did, because we're on a bit of a campaign and a mission as part of our CIC to redefine what the word entrepreneur means. Because, for me, entrepreneurship is the ultimate form of creativity. It's someone that can take an idea and put energy towards turning it into value.
Yes.
In any form, whether that means socially, whether that means financially, whatever that means. For me, the definition of entrepreneur is someone like you.
Really? See, no, right. This is really interesting, because I see myself as a social worker.
Really?
More than an entrepreneur.
You're a social entrepreneur?
Well, I don't see myself as that. I don't know why.
You
Maybe.
just talked about, so since I last saw you, you've released news. You've seen an issue over here in the school, and you've pulled in various different stakeholders and your creativity to pull together a program about citizenship and mental health, which is unique in my mind. I haven't seen anything like that locally, and you've gone, there you go, serve the need. You've talked about this other service that you've got going on. You're speaking. You're over here. You're an entrepreneur. I'm sorry to break it to you.
All right.
You're a social entrepreneur. but why? So the question is, and it's a question we've been asking a lot of our guests that are social entrepreneurs. Why the resistance? What is it? Is there some negative feeling towards that word?
No, there isn't. I don't think there is. I see entrepreneurs as people. I see you as one. You've got multiple income streams, multiple ideas that are all running at the same time. My husband, when he was younger, set up making mixtapes, and he sold them. That's entrepreneurship to me.
Yeah.
He had a job and he loved music and he loved to get that out. He loved what he did and he wanted other people to hear it and also wanted to make a bit of money, right? So actually I'm going to build this thing and I'm going to do these mixtapes and I'm going to sell them. And, you know, that's what he did. I find that. My husband's definitely got an entrepreneurial mindset. Yes, you have,
well,
babes.
having met him, 100%.
Yes, absolutely.
I agree.
You know, so I find people who are entrepreneurs have multiple ideas around multiple things. And perhaps that's where I resist it, because I have multiple ideas around the same thing. Yeah. And that's perhaps where I put the word entrepreneur, which is why I have such resistance to it. And it's not resistance to the word itself, it's where I see myself in that. So that's why. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily the fact I don't, you know, I resist the word. I think it's I resist or perhaps have an idea of what it is versus what other people think it is, maybe.
Well, it's good. And that's why it's such a great word. That's why we love the curious entrepreneurs, because we all, as far as I'm concerned, everyone should be an entrepreneur. Every single person. So great quote. I can't remember his name now. Terrible. And I'll probably bastardise the actual quote. But he said, you know, not every student needs to be an entrepreneur, but everyone will have to think like one someday. Because what we need is, I want our nurses to be entrepreneurs. I want our teachers to be entrepreneurs. I want our policymakers to be entrepreneurs. We need agility and creativity in the market right now. We need to enable people to have that entrepreneurial mindset to go, oh, I can do something. I can, amongst this outrage, see the opportunity to find ways to help myself and help others. So there's no right or wrong. Absolutely.
Oh no, because I want everyone to be a social worker.
Yeah, exactly.
I want everyone to be like to do social work and to understand what it means to be part of a community where you care about each other. And you know, I had an idea, and I'm talking to you about it, that I said, for me, every school leaver of any age range should go into social work. And what I mean by that is they should know what it means to care for others, be that working in a nursery, be that working in an elderly person's home or a retirement village, be that working in a hospital, be that working with another human to understand what it's like to care for community. And that is where my citizenship part comes to play. Because actually, and it's interesting, you talk about entrepreneurship, which I see very, not insular, because insular is the wrong word, but a very individualism, based upon individualism, either for the growth of everybody, which is great. And I love the idea of being able to pivot and to understand that actually when it's all going down the pan, I can pivot and think outside of the box and go for that. Brilliant. And in fact, that leads really, really for me into resilience, right? Bouncing back and doing something different. And I applaud anyone who's able to do that. I don't find myself in that position. I go, oh gosh, if it all moves, what happens? You know, that panic that might come. But I think for me, it goes back to that whole sense of community, that sense of caring and that nurturing side of humanity that I think we need more of. And in fact, if all of our government, if they had to do what I've just explained and talk, they would not be able to sit in those seats and actively do the things that they do without understanding the impact. And I think that's what's missing in our society, is this understanding, this empathy of caring. That's what's missing for me.
Love it. I don't love it, actually. It's quite alarming and shocking, but I think there's opportunity in it. And I think there's, you know, I'm really proud of the work you're doing. I'm really proud of the work we're doing. I'm really proud of the community that's building around all of this. And I think bring it back to your original thing that you were curious about, around this revolution that's come in. It's going to come through kindness and trust.
Absolutely. And community. Alex, what you're building in terms of the Curious Entrepreneurs is community.
100%.
And I know that we talk about entrepreneurship and people being, you know, able to think of themselves and think about what they're doing, but you're doing it in a community, right?
Absolutely.
And that for me,
a good entrepreneur embraces community.
Yeah. Well, look at when you talk about entrepreneurs, funny because the first guy that comes to mind is Richard Branson. I don't know what it is.
It's probably his books there.
Yeah, probably. And for me, I don't know why. Maybe it's because that's what I've been fed in the media, big old entrepreneur. But actually, people that are part of his brand feel a massive sense of family and a sense of community. These things are not done in isolation. They're certainly not done in silos.
We both love Romsey Mill.
Yes.
So Romsey Mill, down Mill Road, in the 70s, was actually built by and founded by an entrepreneur. A local entrepreneur that saw a need for services that were missing within his community. So he started that youth hub. He built that and he's handed it over to the community. Yep. That was an entrepreneurial endeavour.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can be, I think it's where this always comes back to, and I'll finish on this, but you know, this comes back to the many hats.
Yes.
You know, I'm a citizen. I'm a father, I'm a friend, I'm an uncle, I'm all of those different things. And that's who I am, an individual. I'm Alex. My name's Alex, and I'm a citizen.
Love that. Hello, Alex.
Your workshop. That's that to get you started.
Yeah, exactly.
But sometimes I have to perform, and I have to put on a hat. Sometimes Sometimes I'm the chair of the SNEERS initiative, and this Friday I'm off for lunch with our MP. First time he's been back to SNEERS for 6 years apparently, and I've attracted him here through my energy. And now he's going to have to deal with the chair of SNEERS initiative. He ain't going to deal with Alex the citizen because that's too nice. He's got to deal with the chair of SNEERS initiative as standing up for different people's I'm representing someone else. Sometimes I've got to be the entrepreneur. Sometimes I've got to be the teacher. Sometimes I've got to be the mentor. And I think that's why I agree. We're both completely aligned. Actually, we need to be better humans and support each other. 100%. That's the end game. But to get there, to break these silos, to show that we can do it differently, we may just feel like we need to start thinking more entrepreneurial initially to get it off the ground. Then we can need to hand over to a more custodial mindset, I think is probably the right word, where we're not thinking about ourselves. Actually, we're thinking about my 8-week-old baby and his future, because that's what I'm here to do it for.
That's right. Laying down the foundations now, right?
Dani Bridge.
Alex.
I can't believe our time is up, because we could just, this happens every time.
All the time, yes.
Well, maybe we'll go deep on the live-a-thon or something.
Absolutely.
Where can we find Dani Bridge and follow your epic journey through social entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so yes. On the I must do more on my socials. I'm at Danielle
I think you're pretty prolific.
Bridge CEO. I'm trying. And the thing is, I'm terrible because I'm quite honest on there, so you'll get me going, I feel rubbish today. Whereas I think some people are like, so yeah, Danielle Bridge CEO on Instagram, Danielle Bridge on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Twitter, it scares the bejeebies at me, so I don't even go there. And if I do, I kind of jump on and go, oh, no, thank you, and jump back off. And
search for Danielle Bridge CEO.
Yeah, on Instagram, you'll be able to see me.
Thank you so much for your support.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, my darling. It's lovely to see you.